When I started my second term, I wanted to keep with a promise that everything was going to be about best product, best service at lowest price, that everything was going to be a cost-benefit analysis. What are we spending and what are we getting for the money that we're spending? So in that context, I really wanted to take a hard look at the war on drugs, and I wanted to include legalization as a potential alternative. Now, I came at this from the standpoint of half of what we spend on law enforcement, half of what we spend on the courts, and half of what we spend on the prisons is drug-related, about $70 billion a year. And what are we getting for that $70 billion a year? Well, we're arresting 1.8 million people a year on drug-related crime. I always point out that's the population of New Mexico that gets arrested every single year in this country. We now have 2.3 million people behind bars in the United States. That is the highest incarceration rate of any country in the world on a per capita basis. It's just really insane. Over half of those people behind bars in this country today are there on drug-related, non-violent crime. So I wanted to look at the issue. And when I went to look at the issue, I needed to start with Holland, which at the time, 1999, the government said had skyrocketing drug use and that they had crime out the roof. And it had to do with the fact that they had effectively decriminalized all drug use. Well, it turns out on very short examination that Holland has 60% the drug use as that of the United States. Now, that's on a per capita basis, but that's marijuana, that's hard drugs, that's kids, and that's adults. Portugal, 10 years ago, decriminalized all drug use, and in the last 10 years, Portugal has been able to document that they have had a 50% reduction in heroin use in their country. And the only thing that they've done really is decriminalized all drug use. There was that, which was Holland's experience, and then there was the fact that marijuana is a gateway drug. Well, I've smoked marijuana in my life, and my experience would say, it said to me, marijuana was not a gateway drug. But I guess I needed to look into it and see if there was any notion that marijuana was a gateway drug. Well, there's not. There's absolutely not. The government itself conducted a study that determined there's no causality between smoking marijuana and moving on to harder drugs. If there is a gateway element to marijuana, it's that the person that's selling marijuana is also selling other harder drugs. And so for a kid who buys this stuff on the black market, that's exposure to cocaine or heroin or LSD or methamphetamine that they might not have otherwise had if it was a controlled, taxed, regulated environment. So after looking at the issue for a fairly short amount of time, I came to the conclusion that 90% of the drug problem is prohibition-related, not use-related, and that's not to discount the problems with use and abuse, but that ought to be the focus. So in 1999, I advocated legalizing marijuana. And when I say legalize marijuana, it's never going to be legal to smoke pot, become impaired, get behind the wheel of a car. It's never going to be legal to smoke pot, become impaired, do harm to others. When it comes to all the other drugs, I would advocate harm reduction strategies, reducing death, disease, crime, corruption, the things that we really care about. In a nutshell, it's looking at the drug problem first as a health issue rather than a criminal justice issue. And I would just like to put a face to the 1.8 million arrests in this country. I think we have this sense that we're really not arresting people that possess drugs in this country, that we're really arresting people that sell drugs in this country. Well, 90% of all those arrests are for possession only, and if I could put a face to those arrests, I was talking to a fellow in Des Moines, Iowa, this is about 3 months ago, who had been arrested and charged with possession of 1 gram of marijuana. 1 gram of marijuana, that's about the weight of a piece of paper. And he was arrested for possession of 1 gram of marijuana with intent to distribute it to his 17-year-old daughter. He received a 25-year prison sentence and had just gotten out of prison having served over 1 year in prison, where he was now looking at many, many years of supervised probation and parole. That's a face to the 1.8 million arrests in this country.